The Art of War by Sun Tzu, one of my favorite passages, one of the passages I felt most like choosing. If we know that our own troops are capable of attacking, or motivated, interested, enthusiastic, willing to attack, but fail to see that the enemy is not vulnerable, we have only half the victory. If we know that the enemy is vulnerable, but fail to see that our own troops are not capable of attacking, we have only half the victory. If we know that our own troops are capable of attacking and that the enemy is vulnerable, but fail to see that the terrain is unfit for attack, we still have only half of the victory. The wise warrior, when he moves, is never confused. When he acts, is never at a loss. So it is said, know the enemy and know yourself, and victory is never in doubt, not in 100 battles. Know heaven, know earth, and your victory is complete. Okay, so I like this passage because it illustrates many points about choosing decision making when it comes to like even a business idea, even if it, you know, the opposite sex or someone you're interested in or something like that. If we know that we are capable of attacking, like that doesn't mean just capable, it could mean interested. It could mean interested constantly. It could mean permanently interested in most situations. It could mean enthusiastic. It could mean not likely to not be enthusiastic very often. But fail to see that the enemy is not vulnerable, we have only half the victory. So where in your own life with certain endeavors, are you fully sure that you're capable of attacking? This is one thing. This is half of the victory. Now, there might not actually be that many things that you're fully certain that you're capable of attacking. Okay, but if you're fully capable of attacking, but the enemy is not vulnerable, but the audience is not vulnerable, the person is not vulnerable, or they're only vulnerable sometimes, they're not, all the time, they're not permanently, they're very likely to change their mind, they're very likely to not be enthusiastic all the time or change their enthusiasm quite regularly or only vulnerable in very small amounts, blah blah. We have only half the victory. Okay, so for example, I'm just going to think of an example. Maybe you're um, thinking of doing something, some kind of business related to, I don't know, healing or something, and you know that you're capable of attacking, but only once a month in some way, only once every few weeks. If it's the right kind of place and you really feel that it's good for you, then you can do it. But if not, you won't do it. But if you fail to see that the enemy is not vulnerable, if you fail to see that that the place that you could do it is not willing to let you do it or open to letting you do it or anything like that, then you only have half the victory. And it's the same with like say art or music or something like that. If you know that you're capable of attacking sometimes or in certain ways, some enthusiasm, not 100%, but fail to see that the enemy is not really enthusiastic, not really very open. Uh, it's very uncertain how much openness you need to test that. You only have half the victory. So if you're going to fight that kind of war and there's going to be a lot of problems, then that needs to be considered. And it's the same if you know that the enemy is vulnerable, somebody really wants it, or somebody's very enthusiastic very often, but fail to see that you're not enthusiastic enough, or you're not enthusiastic often enough, or you're very likely to change your mind, or you're only capable of doing it under very certain circumstances that may not occur in certain ways and whatever, then you only still have half the victory. And if you know that your own troops are capable of attacking and the enemy is vulnerable but fail to see that the terrain is not fit for the attack, and you say, oh, it doesn't matter, there's still a victory, it's just the terrain. But the terrain is important. Like, there's certain places you can do things, and it's very easy. And it's a bit frustrating that certain places are easy, but that's part of life. The terrain is easy to do certain things in some places. Like, yeah, like for example, art. There's certain places in Mexico where it's not that hard to sell art if you're in the right environment. You got a shop or something. You've got a license. It's not that hard. But in other places, there might be more difficulty. It's difficult to understand, and yes, you might say it doesn't matter, but really it does matter. So another example might be like, in some ways you could attack. In some ways the people are vulnerable, but the terrain, the way you share it, the way you discuss it, maybe you talk about it in too much of a dogmatic way, or a way which people are not receptive to, and so the terrain is not fit for the attack. So you might have to adjust some of these things. What else? Like fitness training, whatever, you're capable of attacking. Fail to see the enemy is not vulnerable. They might be vulnerable only under very specific circumstances to certain things. And if we know the enemy is vulnerable, but you don't want to do it all the time, or you're not that enthusiastic, you only have half the victory. Or if you know that you're capable and the enemy is vulnerable, but it's not the right place to share it, you're not allowed, legality or whatever, you still only have half the victory. So it's just keeping these things in mind to be very considerate in decision making.